Gabo Gavric was our coach. He was a Yugoslavian coach. And all of us kind of had some background in carpentry or carpet laying and different stuff like this. And Gabo Gavric used to know how to lay carpet. So the players could earn more money before this tournament began. We used to go down there, and we even laid down the indoor-outdoor carpet in the Tau Palace so that we were ready to play on it. So for a week before we got to practice on it, we had the opportunity to go down there, earn some extra money, and help lay the carpet in the Cow Palace before we played on it. So if there was some kinks in the carpet, it was our fault, nobody else's.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
All right, let's do this. How are you, folks? It's Tim Hanlon, and it is Good Seats Still Available, that curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. Welcome back. If you've returned for yet another scintillating episode, we thank you for coming back. And if it's your first time here, well, let's hope we can delight you for the first time. And we appreciate you somehow figuring out how to find us. Today, we are back on the sport of soccer, as we are wont to do. And we are yet again joined by a National Soccer Hall of Famer. Paul Child is our guest, and a legend in the North American Soccer League, the major indoor soccer league. Yes, and even a spell in the American Soccer League for a little cup of coffee, as well as the first time we've talked about it, the CISL, the Continental Indoor Soccer League from the 1990s. Paul Child has been there, done that during the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s in the sport of professional soccer in the United States, even a couple of games with the U.S. national team, while not even being a U.S. citizen. We'll get into that story, and among many others with our guest, Paul Child. He of places like the Atlanta Chiefs, both versions, the San Jose Earthquakes, where he was a breakout star, the Pittsburgh Spirit of the MISL, and a number of other places. Paul is a legend on a number of different fronts. Was the number 5 leading scorer in the North American Soccer League back in the day. And a prolific goal scorer, all around stellar guy, and has lots of great stories from his various stops in both indoor and outdoor soccer and his Hall of Fame career. We'll get into that in a couple of seconds with our guest, Paul Child, coming up in just a moment. But first, of course, we need to promotionally remind you that Audible is our friend and our sponsor, and audiobooks is what Audible does, and probably better than anybody else out there on the planet. And we encourage you, of course, to give Audible a try at audibletrial.com/goodseats. And by going to that link, you will be able to enjoy a free audiobook download and a free month's worth of the Audible audiobook service. 180,000 plus titles to choose from. And there's just literally hundreds of titles that seem to be popping up on the Audible service every week. And I dare you to find I dare you to not be able to find a title that will interest you and your earbuds. Again, it's audibletrial.com/goodseats. That's where you're going to get your free 30-day trial of the Audible audiobook service, and most importantly, a free audiobook download for you to listen to completion. And you can cancel at any time. We thank Audible for their sponsorship of this show, and we thank you for giving them a try as well. You know how much I love audiobooks, and here's a great way and a great excuse to get some for yourself. audibletrial.com/goodseats. Thanks for giving it a try. Okay, we have dispensed with our promotional messaging, so let's move right on to our chat with Paul Child, live and exclusive from Pittsburgh, PA, here on The Big Show. So as you may know, our little podcast, we're about 6 months old now. We're kind of, we're delving into teams and leagues and the various stories and stuff that frankly don't exist anymore. And there's obviously no sport that is probably better at delving into those things than the sport of soccer, especially in the United States. And I think perhaps your career, your playing career, coaching career in American soccer is probably a good indication, frankly, of the winding road, I guess, of professional soccer here in the United States, especially in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I guess maybe a good place to start would be kind of how did you even get involved in the American soccer scene at all? You were obviously a budding star and player in England before getting here. Maybe you can give us a little bit of background as to how you got into soccer and then stumbled into the United States, of all places, to pursue your soccer career.
Well, what happened to him, I think it was, I was signed as a 13-year-old player by Aston Villa, which was a first division team at the time in England. And, as a young kid playing soccer, that was a fantastic honor for me. And obviously jumped right into signing with that professional club because, you obviously think you never know what's going to happen, and you hope you can make it to the big time. And I went along with that team and played in their third team, reserve team, and got a couple of little starts in the first team. While I was playing there, my coach, who was Vic Crow, who came over here in the 60s, gave me an opportunity to go to Atlanta, Georgia, and play with the Atlanta Chiefs, and in the off season. So I would come over here for the summer. The season was ended in England, and play for 4 months, and then go back to England. And as I say, I came to Atlanta, and in the NASL at that time, and actually there was only 8 teams in the league at that time. So I got the opportunity to play against a lot of different players, a lot of different nationalities, and that was the idea of the coaches, to send us to the United States to get some kind of, experience playing against different nationalities. And we had them here, German, Yugoslavian, Spanish, Italian, every nationality. So it was a great experience and learning process for me. So that's what I came the first year to do. And then got the second opportunity to come again in the second year. And at that time, I was getting close to 19 years old, and in England they were telling me that I was getting a little bit too old, and they would give me the opportunity to come to the United States and sign with the Atlanta team and stay here, with the option that if I ever went back to England, they would get the first option on me as a player. So I did that, and I came over with the opportunity of playing in Atlanta and playing indoor soccer, which they invented kind of in the Atlanta area, where we kind of started playing indoor soccer and outdoor soccer, and got the opportunity to play year round. So that's kind of like where I got going when I first came to the United States. And when I got here, kind of enjoyed it. And then all of a sudden, something that never happens in England, the team kind of folded. And I didn't really know what that was about. I was 19 years old and didn't really know it was getting... That's strange that a team can just fold and there's no franchise anymore. So I headed back to England and figured that I would go back there and try and get on with a club, Aston Villa or another professional club, when I went back. But when I got back to England, the North American Soccer League kind of like were rebuilding, and I got an opportunity to come to the San Jose Earthquakes. And Milan Mandrić, who was a Yugoslavian owner, gave me that opportunity and kept bugging me while I was living back in England with my family. to come back to the United States. And got to be honest with you, kind of was very hesitant, because I just didn't know where the game was going at that time. There's a league, there isn't a league, the teams are folding, they move to different areas, and this kind of thing. So I think it took about a month or so before I was living with my in-laws, and that kind of helped me make my mind up to get back to the United States and join the San Jose Earthquakes, which I did in 1974.
All right. Well, before we get to the San Jose story, which is clearly seminal in your career because it was a huge uptick both for the league and for you at that point. But I want to get back just for a second to you're playing with Villa, and you've got the opportunity to take a loan for the summer and do this summer soccer thing with Atlanta in 72, and then coming back, I guess, as a full-time player with the then renamed Apollos in 73. What was your expectation about what American soccer was at that time, even before you got here? And maybe you could give our audience a bit of a sense of what it was kind of slugging it out in 1972 and 73, right? The league itself, as you learned, had literally been on life support, just a couple of years earlier down to 5 teams and was kind of trying to build its way back up. I can't imagine that you felt the most comfortable about just sort of jumping in, or maybe it was naivete because you were so young.
I think that's what it was, Tim, to be honest with you. I was so young and just thought that it was a great opportunity. I think when I first came to Atlanta and started playing in the U.S. was I just foreseen a great opportunity. I just thought that the game would grow, and I thought that this game would be a lot bigger than it's taken such a long time. But I thought it would get together within the next 8 or 10 years, and I thought that I could be a part of that too. So I think, when I first came, I kind of was very hesitant and didn't really know, very naive, and didn't know what was going on. But after that first year, I thought that the potential was here, and I thought the game was going to really grow at some stage, and it actually did. But it was kind of like I don't know how you would say it, kind of like taking a chance, a big chance, and just saying, I think it's going to make it. I want to be a part of it, and hopefully I can, start at the beginning and grow with this game in the United States, because we were doing a lot of clinics, a lot of soccer. There was a lot of kids playing the game. It just wasn't that popular as a professional sport at that time, and we were starting to get recognition as the NASL started growing. And I just thought I could be a part of that and grow with it, and have that opportunity again, because the second year that I came here with the Apollos, that was the year that I kind of came as a full-time player, and really, then that was the time that I thought the game was going to really take off, and within 4 or 5 or 10 years, it would be, a really big sport in this country, and it just has taken a lot longer, and it finally got here, and it's still growing, but I think that I just wanted to be a part of that, and it was a great opportunity for me, and also kind of like rejuvenation for my career, because I left England at 19 years old because they were telling me at the club that I was getting too old, and that they didn't think there was an opportunity for me to get into the first team, but you were welcome to go to the United States. So I think what it was, I kind of like hit the bottom of the barrel when they told me that, and got this opportunity to come to the States, and thought that I can change that around. And actually, lucky enough that I had a lot of great things happen to me and got to play with some great players and change that around. So it was kind of like the never give up and get back to the get to the United States and grow with the game that was starting to get more and more popular in this country.
Well, yeah, and obviously it was playing time, and you started to show some prowess around the goal area, right? Of scoring, I guess, 16 goals in 2 seasons with Atlanta. But maybe let's get on to San Jose. You mentioned Milan Mandric, and still with us, and frankly, somebody I would love to, if he's ready, willing, and able to chat, because obviously a legendary figure in the earliest of days of soccer in this country. But maybe you can kind of describe a little bit more about how San Jose came into your life. And with all due respect, in 1974, a part of a number of teams that were added to a quickly now expanding North American Soccer League. And the San Jose Earthquakes really hit it out of the gate from moment one in 1974, including your arrival, right?
Yes, it did. I mean, there was really not much going on in San Jose, to be honest with you. That area was just really growing, and there was not much at all happening in regards to a sports franchise or a team in that area. Obviously, there was a San Francisco and Oakland, but nothing in San Jose, which was at the end of the bay, you know. And this opportunity came along where Milan Mandric, who was the owner of the team, who was actually originally from Yugoslavia, and had a love for the game like you wouldn't believe, and had a great interest in making it happen, and did very well in the computer system Silicon Valley, and made a lot of money at it. So obviously he was willing to spend a lot of money and make San Jose a great franchise. And when I first got there, it took a lot of persuading for me to come back to the States, because, as I say, it was kind of like, am I going to be here or in San Jose for 1 year, 2 years, or 6 months? You never really knew. And I think what was crazy with that he kept calling me and bugging me to get there, because it was a brand new franchise. They wanted to start out of the gate with some great players and some hard-working players more than big name players, and that was my opportunity, and I took it. Milan Mandric talked me into coming to the San Jose area, and as I say, the town was kind of just developing and growing, and we kind of we had a great chemistry with the team. The team was more of a hard-working group of guys that were very good soccer players, but never quite made it. And then this was the opportunity in the community to just, we were drawing fantastic crowds at Spartan Stadium of 19,000. The stadium held 19,000. And every game, it was a packed house, and you would go out on the field feeling that, I know most of my fellow teammates did, get out there, and we have to win this game. The people paid money for us to see us, and we got to send them home happy. And we just worked very, very hard and had a great chemistry in that team and organization, where we just started growing tremendously. And another big factor was a general manager called Dick Berg, who had some fantastic and crazy ideas of how to promote the game, which I'd never seen before. Most of the other players hadn't, Tim, and, came out with a Crazy George, which I think you've had on your show, and a guy that just got everybody wound up and ready to go before games and during the games, and made it a fantastic night out and an exciting sport to come watch. And the game just took off in the San Jose area, as I say, being one of the first professional franchises, sports franchises in that area. It was a great thing for me and most of the players that I played with there, and it just took off, and it's still going strong today.
If I remember correctly, I don't know if it was that specific season or 75, or certainly a number of those seasons, the the field, and this is before FIFA sort of cracked down and tried to standardize what the field looks like around the world. But if I remember correctly, was painted in various colors, including the earthquake colors of, I guess it was sort of this sort of dark red and black. And I think there was an earthquake ball logo in the middle. Do you remember any of that, or maybe even sliding or skidding in some of that?
I used to come off the field, Tim, with most of that stuff stuck all over my uniform. You know what I mean? It was all over your legs and everything, because it was, again, this was a Dick Berg trademark of coming up with various gimmicks and different things for the game and the fans that just shocked everybody, or was a new wave at that time. And yeah, you're correctly right. The penalty area was dark red. The lines were in black. I think they had to go through a lot of hula to just try and get that to happen, because, like you say, FIFA didn't want that. The North American Soccer League kind of were trying to go by their rules, but did change their rules a little bit with the 35-yard line offside and different stuff like that. So I think it was kind of like a bit of a shock to the soccer world when you see the field painted the way it was. But boy, did it create a lot of publicity and a lot of washing for the equipment guys, because most of the uniforms were covered in all that stuff. And I always remember going back into the locker room at halftime and trying to wash a lot of that paint there you'd slid in the penalty box and stuff like this. But yeah, that was a kind of a crazy time, but what a great publicity for the club.
Well, look, that wasn't the only publicity, right? Because let's be honest. Your first year there, you led the league in scoring, and you had 15 goals and 6 assists, and made the All-Star team. Obviously, you made it the year before in Atlanta too. But you were clearly the star of the team in '74, and they I believe they featured you quite prominently in various forms of publicity that year and onward, right?
Oh, they did, Tim. Yeah, I mean, as I say, when I first got there, obviously I was trying to adapt to. This was California, not Atlanta, Georgia. You know what I mean? So it was a little bit, very much different. And as soon as I arrived, I remember I never spent too many days when we weren't practicing, not going out to a Tijuana's club to speak with Dick Berg, going to all kinds of different sports banquets, soccer, youth, award giving things. That was a big shock to me, because I'd never really done that before, coming from England, and this was like a big part of the PR of getting out there and talking, in front of a big crowd that I'd never been used to. I enjoyed playing in front of a crowd, but not really speaking to, 200 or 300 people in a banquet. And Dick Berg took, traveled with me most of the time, and we went to every sporting banquet, every Tijuanas, every Boy Scout meeting, every training session, like from youth clubs to, little league baseball things, even where, we were promoting the game of soccer, and you felt kind of like you're just preaching the word of soccer, and someday it would catch on. And looking back now, it definitely worked for us, but we were out there 24/7 and, getting out in the community. And it wasn't just me, it was every player on the team as well, but obviously I was lucky enough to be the guy that scored a lot of goals, so I got a lot of headlines, and never forgot that, I wouldn't have been able to do that with the players, without the players around me. So we really all got on well together and just worked hard in the community as well as on the field. to just promote the team the way it should be promoted, and it obviously worked,
Well, so I mean that's a theme we've heard again and again. I mean, we've had Kyle Rote Jr. on the show, we've had Bobby Moffett on the show, and those two in particular were deep in their remembrances of that part of the game. It was proselytizing. It was almost like preaching, if you will, grassroots, right? and in this country, it needed it because the sport of soccer was still barely on the radar, certainly on the professional level, but even on the youth level, it was starting, but it was really kindling at that point. Hardly a conflagration like it is today.
Oh yeah, definitely. And guys like Bobby Moffett and Carl Rote Jr., they were out there in their communities doing exactly the same thing we were, in San Jose. And but that's what was fantastic, to start seeing the teams coming in and the league starting to grow from 8 teams in the league up to 24 teams at one time, and some of the great players that started to come over into the United States and start playing, and for me, getting a great opportunity to play against players that I only dreamt of playing with or playing against at any time, and I used to idolize a lot of the players that were here, and then all of a sudden got an opportunity to play against them and with some of them. So it was just a real opportunity to develop the game and help the game grow. And I think not just myself, but a lot of European players and even American players did a lot to make that happen. And we're starting to see the benefits of it starting to come through a little bit now, with the MLS and the USL and NASL. The leagues have finally got to where they are more established and they're staying around, and we're starting to add more and more teams to the league, All
right. So describe to me, before we sort of get out of your San Jose experience here, there's the interesting thing happened after your first outdoor season, right? And before the 75 outdoor season was this indoor tournament of the North American Soccer, basically their first ever true indoor season. And there's a really interesting book. I don't know if you have a copy of it, but it's long out of print, but I will see if I can find a copy if you don't have it. It's called Soccer Fever by a guy named Richard Little. A Year with the San Jose Earthquakes. It talks about the entire 1975 season with the Earthquakes. And not only are you all over that book, right, and pictures and everything, it's pretty interesting. But I'm fascinated by, it starts pretty much with the indoor season of 1975. And I don't know how much you recollect of this, but, and obviously indoor will be a bigger part of your career as we talk about it a little bit later. But I look at some of those pictures of those games at the Cow Palace. And I don't know if you remember that, but I look at the goals and how short they were, right? I mean, we know what the MISL's goals looked like. They were much bigger and more, I guess, sized properly. But these were sort of very low and narrow. And maybe you can describe sort of, if you can remember, what the Cow Palace was like, what indoor soccer was like. I suspect it was a new feeling and enterprise for everybody involved, including yourself. But you were really good at it too, right? You led the league and the team in scoring in that regard too. I'm really curious as to what the indoor game was like in '75 in your mind, if you can remember.
Oh, it was a fantastic time in my life, Tim. I loved the indoor game because there's nothing better than when you took a shot at the goal and the ball would come back to you, or you use the walls as a teammate and you play 1-2s off the walls and around goalkeepers and get shots. And I got a second, a third, a fourth opportunity, and that was the main thing for me. It was the ball was never out of bounds, so I had a chance to get on the end of a lot of these ricochets or rebounds off the wall and put them in the net. I have some great memories from the Cow Palace. I got to be honest with you, because Cow Palace was more down towards San Francisco, so we had to travel quite a way down to get to the Cow Palace. But that was kind of like one of the first big indoor arenas I'd ever really I had the opportunity to kind of play in. There was no indoor facilities quite that big. I think it held around 10,000 people. And we went down there, and actually we started practicing there. I think it was like a week or 2 weeks before the tournament started that we were holding there. And I think we played against the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and there was a couple of other teams in this tournament from the North American Soccer League. But I loved this game. I thrived on it. I just loved the speed of it and the opportunities to score goals. But there's something I got to tell you about it, Tim. Gabo Gavric was our coach. He was a Yugoslavian coach. And all of us kind of had some background in some kind of, carpentry or carpet laying and different stuff like this. And Gabo Gavric used to know how to lay carpet. And so the players could earn more money before this tournament began. We used to go down there, and we even laid down the indoor-outdoor carpet in the Town Palace so that we were ready to play on it. So for a week before we got to practice on it, we had the opportunity to go down there, earn some extra money, and help lay the carpet in the Town Palace, and before we played on it. So, if there was some kinks in the carpet, it was our fault, nobody else's. But that's how we kind of got in there, laid the carpet. And there was another thing. It was just like an ice hockey arena, actually. And I always remember that around the perimeter, like in ice hockey nowadays, you could have that high glass and this kind of thing. What was around this arena at the sides and the very end, where it was a high end, was this like chipping wire. It was like a mesh wire where sometimes when you're running along the boards and your hand would catch in this wire, and it was like, as I say, little square holes in the wire, stop the ball going out and hitting anybody. And then at the ends, they would build these goals that were like 16 feet wide and 4 foot high. And so to kind of square off the end of the arena. And what that really happened there was, any time the ball got over 4 foot high and kind of sat on a ledge behind the goal, and you'd have to wait for that ball to come off the ledge because they hadn't really developed the rules yet and how they were going to, compensate for that. And you'd be waiting for this ball to kind of like roll off this back ledge back down onto the surface or close to the surface before you could hit it and try and get a chance of shooting at the goal again. And the goals, as I say, were 16 feet wide and 4 foot high. So, they were still trying to develop the game and put the goals. They hadn't developed the game where they put the goals right in the actual radius wall, what it ended up being. And then they were, 7 foot high, and I think they were a little bit narrower, but more realistic soccer goals than that original goal. But it was pretty funny to look at that and see and see players waiting for that ball to come rolling off the top of the back.
So I was like a pinball machine with the ball sort of stuck. I'm actually looking at some of those pictures from this book, and I will put that on our website, goodseatsstillavailable.com, with this episode, and we'll post some of these photos as well as when we socially promote this on the online and everything. But you're absolutely right. I mean, your recollection is spot on. I mean, you see these sort of fencing, sort of chicken wire type fencing. It's where the plexiglass would be in today's modern game. And then you see basically like this cage, which is really this goal kind of thing. And the ball literally could sit on top of it if it didn't roll off correctly. But it's a very interesting experiment, right? Because I got to think, that it was fun to play, even though it wasn't sort of fully formed yet. And ironic because in 75 or so, right? This was sort of a sidelight for the NASL that, just a number of years later, this major indoor soccer league, which you would play a prominent role in later, would actually truly professionalize that and make a solid go of it as a full-time enterprise. And that kind of woke the NASL up actually to do it as well after having, if you will, invented the game, with this tournament in 75.
Oh, no, definitely. Most definitely. I mean, that's what was crazy about it. I think the indoor game that kind of, I think a lot of American people that were watching the indoor game at that time, they loved that game when we played it in the Camp House because, there was a lot more goals scored, a lot more goalkeepers diving, saving, ricochets, ball bouncing around, a lot more, action, quicker action than the outdoor game. So I think, that's what kind of like caught the eye of a lot of people and made people realize that the indoor game could be a big factor in this country as well. And the MISL kind of jumped on that and took off. As the North American Soccer League, as I say, they kind of definitely developed the game, but they hadn't kind of critiqued it and they hadn't figured out, how we're going to play this game and, how can we get this end of the field where we can put a goal in it where, the ball's not held up, it's continuously moving and bouncing back. And then they finally figured it all out and came up with a lot more different rules and regulations. But that was definitely the beginning and the start of the major indoor soccer league because they took it and eventually had 24 teams, I think, in the MISL where, players were playing in the outdoor league, in the NASL, or playing in the ASL, and then dropping down and in the winter months or coming to indoor soccer. So players were able to make a salary year round as well, Tim. You got to remember that we weren't getting paid a lot of money like they are nowadays. And, we were, we love to be able to play a game and get paid for it. I know that's what I did. But it was fantastic that we could play year round and go from outdoor to indoor and, continue that soccer game and the fans, building the fan base, which I think a lot of clubs did, So I think it really took off in the indoor game, and I'm a little bit surprised that it hasn't kept on going. But as you know, the outdoor game seems to have taken over now, and indoor seems to be. There's still a lot of teams playing, I know, but not at the kind of level that we were playing at in the NASL and MISL.
Yeah, that's true, and there's almost a sort of a nostalgia for it. And I do know there's an effort to get futsal going, which is obviously a little, more of a purist's approach to it. But let's. I want to go back to your San Jose years because I guess being in San Jose until pretty much the end of the decade, right? You were witness to not only the success in San Jose and how that team and franchise grew, but frankly, that's what the halcyon days when the league itself was really sort of just taken off, right? And you were talking about salaries and stuff, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts were about, how solid you thought this league was, given all of the influx of talent, like the Pelés and the Beckenbauers of the world and the George Bests of the world, and I got to think some of the money that was starting to come in as well. Did you think it was sustainable? Did you think it was here? It is finally happening. Did you see any cracks in the armor as you finished your career in San Jose and then went to places like Memphis for a year and then the reconstituted Atlanta Chiefs for another 2 years? It sounded like a little more franchise bingo again, like you experienced early on.
No, you're definitely right. It was. I got to admit, when I saw that, when we had 24 teams in the North American Soccer League and the New York Cosmos, that Pelé, Beckenbauer, as you were naming, all these fantastic, Johan Cruyff came here, Georgie Best came, all the players that I had watched growing up and never thought that I would be able to play or, be on the field with. And I thought that I'd made the right decision because, I took a chance on coming to this country and thinking that it was going to make it. And I thought definitely it's there now, and salaries are going to increase, and hopefully I was going to be on that list as a little bit too, so I could support my family better and live pretty well. But I never ever thought that the North American Soccer League would go through that period where franchises started to falter and teams were dropping out of the league, and I just thought that it was just on its way and was just going to continuously grow and develop like most other countries with their professional leagues and have a Division 1, Division 2, Premier League, whatever you want to call it. And we were going to get that way at that time. But obviously I was definitely wrong. And I got to be honest with you, Tim, I think some of that was kind of the money that the clubs or some clubs were spending kind of like was the beginning of the end of the North American Soccer League. I think the New York Cosmos, were paying Pele, $9 million, Beckenbauer and all these guys. And a lot of other clubs in the league couldn't afford these kind of players. So clubs would have maybe 2 or 3 top-end players where they would come and play. But these players were coming and kind of like taking, using or absorbing all the money that they could, and the franchises were really struggling from it, because some of the clubs couldn't compete, kind of like with the New York Cosmos and with the Tampa Bay Rowdies and some other clubs that had big money players that could draw people. I mean, you got to remember the New York Cosmos were drawing, 70,000 people to a game, so they could generate enough money to pay their players, and their players would go on a world tour at the end of the season to all different kinds of countries because they had every different nationality player playing on it, and the season only lasted for 4 months or maybe 5 months counting pre-season, 6 months at the most. So a lot of the other franchises couldn't, make that money to keep paying their players or getting better players every year. So I think it was kind of like the beginning of the end,
Okay, friends, sorry for the interruption. Just wanted to quickly remind you that today's episode of Good Seats Still Available is brought to you by our friends at Audible, the premier provider of digital audiobooks with over 180,000 titles to choose from in just about every genre you could think of. Audible titles play on iPhone, Kindle, Android, and more than 500 devices and MP3 players for listening anytime, anywhere. And for a limited time, my audience can listen to a free download of any book that they choose, as well as get a 30-day free trial when you go to audibletrial.com/goodseats. That's audibletrial.com/goodseats. And you can choose from over 180,000 titles, as we said, including one that I'm listening to right now. It's called The 10-Gallon War by John Eisenberg. That's the story of the NFL's Cowboys, the AFL's Texans, and the feud for Dallas's pro football future. Another one on my list, which I have yet to download, but is on my queue, that could be interesting to our audience here, is called The National Forgotten League by Dan Daly, entertaining stories and observations from pro football's first 50 years. Those are just 2 of the many thousands of titles to choose from, and not just in sports history, but you name the genre that you might want to listen to, and Audible's got it. By the way, two guests perhaps that we'll have on the show, hopefully sometime soon. But again, go to audibletrial.com/goodseats for your free 30-day trial, as well as your free audiobook download to try it out for yourself. Again, that's audibletrial.com/goodseats. And now, back to our conversation. Let's juxtapose that sort of those New York Cosmos days and fair disclosure, I was as a kid, a season ticket holder for a number of years watching those games. So I'm partly to blame, I guess. So juxtapose that with Memphis, 1980. Not the most well-attended team, right? But pretty gritty club. Some really quality talent. Is a great picture I'm looking at here, which I'll share with you, of you in the air. It looks like you're celebrating a goal, like you're literally in midair and your fist is up, and you're obviously celebrating a goal in your number 12 jersey. But what was the season in Memphis like, given all the adulation and the excitement that you had experienced for years in San Jose? I got to think Memphis was a bit of a challenge, I guess, in terms of the soccer knowledge there and appreciation and that kind of stuff.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was kind of like let me give you the reason. One of the reasons that I went there, San Jose, we're going through a bit of a turmoil, I think. Milan Mandrick had sold the team to another new owner, and the team was struggling financial-wise, and an opportunity came around with Memphis had a new team, or a team that was a newish team, and they had a new owner, and they I think purchased me from the San Jose Earthquakes, and the ownership of the Earthquakes at that time, as I say, we got on hard times, and I think had the opportunity to make some money on a player. I was that player. The only reason I went to Memphis because I got to meet Charlie Cook, who was a great player in England at one time, and I'd seen him growing up from Chelsea. Was the coach, and he contacted me and told me that the Memphis team, we have a new owner, we're going to grow and develop this team and make this franchise. We want you to be a part of it, like you were in San Jose, and we purchased you, and I think they sold me for about $100,000, and the reason I went there, Tim, was because I had a guaranteed 3-year contract with the Memphis Rogues. I did not have an agent of any kind, or I had a kind of a league contract, and that was one of the reasons I went there, for more stability. I was hopefully going to be there for 3 years. The franchise, we're going to spend a lot more money and grow the game and advertise it, and the game was going to get big in Memphis. And what happened was the owner, after 6 months, folded the team, and I was picked up again by Atlanta, of all places, but me thinking I had a guaranteed contract, it had nothing in there saying about if the franchise dissolved and the owner folded it. You know what I mean? So that shows you how naive I was. And at that time, we didn't have agents and we didn't have contracts and big, attorneys representing any of us. So that was one of the biggest reasons I went to Memphis. But I had a great time there, and I got to admit that I played with some great players. But it was a kind of like going and starting all over again. And actually, I enjoyed it very much. And then when that happened to me 6 months after I was there, after the season, and then moved back into Atlanta, it was kind of like I had to keep rejuvenating, going back to these places where I'd been, or again, preaching the word of soccer and trying to keep, my ability up as high as I possibly could, and making it work and making a living for my family,
Well, you were not only making it work. I mean, you when all is said and done, even and Atlanta was your last NASL stop. I mean, you wound up as the 5th leading scorer in all-time NASL history, right? With 120 goals across, I think it was like 241 games. I mean, only Canalia, Alan Willie, Karl Heinz Granitza, and Ron Futcher were ahead of you in that regard. And you're ahead of folks like, other legends like Alan Green and Mike Stoyanovich and Ace Netzelenge and Steve David and Elijah Midget. You clearly, despite moving around and being part of this wacky thing called the NASL, certainly didn't lack for skill on the field, especially putting the ball in the net.
No, I didn't, and that's what was great for me as well, Tim. I mean, you always doubt, you're wondering, can you do it again? Can you make this happen? I just think I had a different kind of an attitude, Tim. I think I just when I ever went to a new club, or when I was at a club and the club would bring in this high-profile forward or another high-profile player, I used to look at it as, how can this guy help me become a better goal scorer? How can I, learn more from this guy, or this player can, help me because he's a better passer of the ball. He can see me in positions that other players couldn't, and get the ball to me in the penalty area or in the 6-yard box where I can get on the end of it. So I think it was my that kind of attitude that I had, and a will to never quit and keep on going, that really helped me along. And just to say, I can make it, and I can keep on going. And like you say, it worked out that way. I just had a knack to get in the right places at the right time and be with the right players, and they got me. As again, a lot of good players that I played with made that work for me as well. So I did do very, very well, but a lot of players helped me do that too.
Well, Atlanta got you playing the indoor game again, obviously with also an outdoor. And we had Chiefs general manager at the time, Terry Hansen, on a previous episode. And we were talking about the interesting story about how the team indoors outdrew the team that played outdoors, which I find incredibly interesting, but maybe even a hint or a testament that, at least in that era, that time, this indoor game was a little bit more exciting and peppy and maybe of interest to the American sports fan than the somewhat more of an outdoor game. Were you sensing that indoor was kind of where the action was going when you were there?
Well, I definitely felt that way because, as the teams were dropping out of the North American Soccer League too, the franchises were kind of dwindling away, and I think it was down to 8 or 9, I can't remember exactly, but 8 teams. And when I went back to Atlanta, we actually played a game there and had 12,000 fans there, and it was Who Killed J.R. night. If you remember, Dallas was a big soap kind of opera, that they played a game on the night that J.R. got killed in this soap opera, and they were going to show this at the end of the game as well. So they drew about 12,600 people to this in the Omni in Atlanta, and what a great atmosphere! And we went out and we won the game as well, which made it even better. But
so that that was a promotion then when they would show Dallas as at the end of the game as a promotion to stick around and come to the game, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Huh. And it was as I say, it was kind of like this was a big thing in that show where Who Shot J.R. and it just, I don't know whether, I hope they were coming to see us play, but not just to see Who Shot J.R. But you would hope that they I think the idea was to get as many people there as possible, and those people that were kind of hesitant to come to a game but got an opportunity, and the tickets weren't super expensive either, you know what I mean? So to expose them to the indoor game, and I think that kind of took off as well, where the MISL caught on to that, and then that's where the MISL started coming around, and then after Atlanta, I was there for a couple of years playing in the outdoor league. We were Ted Turner was the owner, which was a different kind of an owner, but he owned a bunch of different franchises in Atlanta. And before he kind of pulled out of all of that and went into CNN, TV, and I was there for 2 years, and then the opportunity came around to jump into the MISL. So,
all right. Well, let's talk about the MISL in particular. Let's talk about Pittsburgh, because our friend John Fredlin was the guy who got us connected to you, I guess, through. I guess there was a reunion with the River Hounds recently, and through his good graces, we were able to figure out a way to get connected and drag you onto this podcast. But let's talk about your Pittsburgh Spirit days, because clearly you were quite a star and a standout there too. And I get the sense from lots of people that I've actually ever met from Pittsburgh who lived there during that time have very, very fond memories of the Spirit. I got to think that that was reflected back by the players too. No?
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, it was kind of the feeling, Tim. I think when I first went to San Jose, and the atmosphere there with the fans and their relationship with the players on the field and off the field, with all the different promotions and different things that we were doing. I came to Pittsburgh in 81, and I've been here ever since. And I got that feeling when I first came here, down to earth people. They like a hard-working player, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to give it everything I've got, kind of like the Steelers mentality, and we were playing indoor soccer. That was a new sport here, and at that time, if you think about it, there wasn't cable and all this kind of stuff. There was free television networks, and we were mainly on those television networks all the time, just as much as the Pirates and the Steelers. The Penguins, we were playing in the same indoor stadium as the Penguins. We used to draw about 10,000 people at that time, and they would draw about 5,000. So the game, again, kind of took off here, and I was lucky to be a big part of it, because, as I said, I love the indoor game, because it just, I just lit up when I had the opportunity to, use the walls as a partner, and the quickness of the game and the rebounds and the opportunity to get and score lots of goals. And I think that's why it really took off here, because, the average goals in a game were about 13 at that time. So, compared to the outdoor game, we used to see a 1 or 2-0 game. That's what caught the attention of the fans. And I think that's another big reason of why it took off. But again, we had a great group of guys that came from a lot of different nationalities, and adapted to the indoor game, coming from outdoor, and made this really an exciting time in this area. And to this day, I still get a lot of people coming up to me, and usually they're kids that I met during the games or at halftime or after the games and signing autographs, who now have kids that, they're trying to introduce me as their hero as a soccer player. And a lot of these kids look at me and think, who's this old guy, But the parents have just been brought up with that, and they love the game, and they, never stop coming up for autographs and wanting to talk about different games and situations that happened in the indoor game.
Any players that you remember fondly? Certainly Stan Terlecki was obviously a huge goal-scoring threat along with you. You had John O'Hara on that team. You had Helmut Dudek, and a lot of folks. Yeah. Oh yeah,
I mean, some fantastic players. Not just Stan Terlecki. I mean, Stan Terlecki was a fantastic player, a different kind of a player. The indoor game, he just exploded when I played with him the first season. When we first met, and they brought Stan in, we could play with a man down, and Stan and I would play together, and I would get to the far post, and Stan Terlecki would find me, and the biggest problem I had after this first year was Stan realized and I think the ownership made a bit of a mistake. They said to Stan, for every goal you score, you get a bonus of $100 or whatever it was at that time. And then Stan stopped passing the ball to him because he wanted to score goals to make more money. But I think what was crazy with that was he was a fantastic player. We had 3 different lines. So then we had a Polish line where we got some great players like Adam Topolsky, Gregor Stojek, Ian Sibiz. We had on that kind of a line, there was a Polish line, and then a kind of a European line where, and actually John O'Hara played on the Polish line because he did so well as a defender, as an American player with those guys. And I played with Dave McKenzie, Johnny O'Hare played with us now and again, Marcio Liete, just a bunch of different nationalities that, came in, and we had a great rapport with the fans as well. I mean, we just, it took off, and we were drawing some great crowds, and we were on television all the time. We had a lot of games at that time. I think it was 48 games in a season, and I think we made the playoffs once or twice, but other than that, we were doing great attendance-wise compared to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the owner at that time was DiBartolo.
Yep.
And I think what was the downfall of the Spirit was that Mario Lemieux came along, and the Penguins had him picked him in the draft, and that was the change that really happened, where the ownership kind of went to ice hockey instead of the indoor soccer game. Else, who knows where it would have been today, looking at the NSL.
You also then played a season with the Blast and in Baltimore, and the LA Lasers, your last MISL team. But you also snuck in an outdoor season with your old counterpart at the Tampa Bay Rowdies, Rodney Marsh's Carolina Lightning. That was must have been an interesting story too, because they had won, I think, in '81 previously, the year before you played the ASL championship. That was, I guess, your last real outdoor season experience, but I guess really the only chance to play outdoors, given the increasingly full-time schedule that the MISL was now undergoing.
Yeah, that was true. It was getting more and more difficult to try and play indoor and outdoor, Tim. It was just too much. And obviously you're getting older as well, and your body is kind of like deteriorating. So it was getting very, very hard for players to do that. But playing outdoor and indoor year round, it was just, there were just too many games. I had the great opportunity to go down there to the Lightning. Rodney Marsh was the coach, and what a great experience that was for me. I didn't have such a good season when I got there, actually. I kind of went through I played a few games, and I think what had happened to me, I was kind of drained from the indoor season.
Sure.
And I got a very bad stomach pull, I think it was a hernia, and it kept me out of a bunch of games that, I felt so bad about, because Rodney had brought me in and, was obviously looking for me to help this team win another championship, if they could, because they were in the finals the year before, and the crowd was 21,000 people at most of the games, and they were looking to kind of repeat, and they were bringing in some players, and I kind of fell short. I think that was a bit of a downer for me, after such a long period of doing very, very well. But Rodney was understanding, and he appreciated it, because I said to him, I think it was like 2/3 through the season or 1/3 through the season, hey Rodney, I'm just feeling so bad that I can't get on the field. I'm injured with this pull. If you need me to go home and leave the team, I will do. I don't have a problem with that. And he said, no, Paul, we need you here for, your enthusiasm with the other players and motivation. And we can get you back to fit and playing again. And I kind of ended up the season playing 1 or 2 games, but that was about it at that time. But what a great opportunity again! Another new kind of franchise coming around where the game was growing like crazy at that time.
Well, your indoor career certainly didn't suffer at all, right? I mean, I think when you were the Spirit, you were scoring on average, I think, over a goal a game. And even with the Blast and the Lasers, you put in another, I don't know, according to my records here, almost another 70 goals as well in 2 seasons in those 2 places. So clearly you took to the indoor game very well. And there's no doubt that your scoring prowess, both indoor as well as outdoor, is quite notable. Obviously, part of the calculus that allowed you to be inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame. Before we get to that, though, I guess I want one last sort of little chapter here in your pro career that's interesting to me, and we really haven't delved into quite yet on this show. Is the Continental Indoor Soccer League, the CISL? You want to give us a little bit of a taste of what that was about, both in Pittsburgh and Detroit. This was a summertime league, right, where the idea of indoor soccer was a summer thing to essentially keep the arenas humming. That when hockey and basketball were off season, right?
Yeah, definitely, Tim. That's exactly what it was about. And actually, the commissioner of the league worked with the MISL at one time, and I think he was the assistant commissioner. And he developed this league and got a bunch of owners together and started the Continental Indoor Soccer League, is what it's called. And I had a great opportunity here in Pittsburgh because the ownership for the ice hockey team had changed, and they were going to bring indoor soccer in here in the summertime, which everybody kind of like raised their eyebrows at because, in Pittsburgh, when the weather's nice, you not really want to come inside, and pretty much everywhere else in the country, I would imagine. But the game was so big here with the Spirit. I think we did pretty well with the CISL for 2 years. We were drawing 5,000 or 6,000 people to a game in the Civic Arena, and because I think the span was about 3 to 4 months actually, and I had a great time there because I was the coach of the team. I got that offer from the club and took it on, and obviously it was a big part of my life, and I knew enough about it to where we could make things happen. I thought, and we did well for 2 years, and then the franchise kind of like went out. They were dropping the team in Pittsburgh, and the Detroit Neon came around and offered me an opportunity to go to Detroit, and I went there for 2 years and finished coaching up in Detroit. But the CISL was definitely a different concept, and to play indoor soccer in the summertime. And I think that's kind of like where it failed because, like I say, most of the teams and the franchises trying to play indoor in the summer when the weather, was nice. A lot of people, it was tough to get people indoors to come and watch it, and that's where a lot of them had a hard time with it. But it was a great experience, and I got to see and got to go to a lot of different cities and see some great players and coach some great players in that league, and that was a great experience for me too.
I got to ask, in Detroit, having playing for in 2 years a team called the Neon and then the Safari, or coaching, did you at least get with 2 car brands, by the way? Did you or the players at least get a chance to get a car during your playing experience, or was it just promotional and name only?
No, you're dead right. I had a Neon. And then there was a Safari van, if you remember. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but that was the obviously the connection in Detroit, the car connection, and they were big sponsors of the team, and we did get vehicles to use while we were playing. And I had a neon and I had a safari as well.
Yeah, there you go. So, friends, there. If anybody younger out there is listening and wants to become a professional soccer player, you too can get a look them up, a Dodge Neon or a GM Safari minivan, probably two of the most styling vehicles you could probably ever imagine being a professional soccer player. I'm sure
it was better than catching the bus, Tim.
Well, I'm sure that I'm sure, but probably not much more than that. I'm sure you've got some great pictures of those vehicles and you driving in them. All right, a couple of last things, and I don't want to keep you forever here, Paul. You've been wonderful with your time. Two things. One, before we get to your Hall of Fame thing, because it's obviously a big deal and something I want to talk about. You did have a bit of a spell with the U.S. national team back in, I guess it was 73, right? A couple of games. Do you want to explain that little situation? Because I think at that point, you weren't a U.S. citizen, were you? But you were playing for the U.S. national team?
Yeah, I wasn't a citizen, and somehow, some way, I got picked up by the U.S. Soccer Federation, and we played a game in Windsor, Ontario. I think it was against I think it was the Polish national team then, and it was a kind of a little tournament that we were invited to, and they pulled. There was about 3 or 4 different players. They pulled from different teams at that time. They were starting to pull the ranked players from those clubs, and I got an opportunity to play on the national team 2 times, and I was not a citizen at that time, you know. So it was kind of crazy. I mean, it would never happen nowadays, but at that time they were kind of hoping to, you know, rejuvenate and develop this the U.S. national team, and played with Carl Roth and a bunch of different other American players that were very good players, and it was a different experience. It was a great opportunity for me. I mean, you wouldn't say no to it, and I didn't even think about it. You know, I thought it was just, it had something to do just because I played soccer in this country, you know, and when you did that, you could play on the national team. But obviously later on, you tend to find out that probably was illegal at that time because I wasn't a citizen. So kind of crazy in that respect, Tim, getting an opportunity to play for a national team that actually won both games, which was a rarity at that time in the international game against the U.S., you know.
Well, I'm certainly happy that the National Soccer Hall of Fame in 2003 did not let that prevent you from being inducted. You can imagine the snit that could have been in today's, oversight of the game and stuff. But I think it's a very, very interesting piece of trivia. Were you the only player that might have happened to, or do you think there were other players either at that era?
I think there was 2 or 3 other players on those teams that I was on. I don't know exactly because it was not one of these things that, you know, these had been players that probably came from another country, but I didn't know if they were citizens or not. You know what I mean? I just turned up, put my uniform on, and went out there and did the business, you know, and tried to do the best I could and play for this country that I've lived in longer than I ever lived in England, you know, and, you know, it was a great honor for me at that time, even though I hadn't been here a long time, but knew that I wanted to be, you know, a part of the U.S. soccer scene. And actually, you know, what a fantastic honor to be, you know, inducted into the National Hall of Fame.
How did you find out? Was it a surprise? And, you know, what does it mean to you to be, you know, especially now that soccer is becoming such a much more mainstream and seriously understood sport in this country, to be a member of that select group, especially having pioneered back in the early days when, you know, frankly, it wasn't all that certain that it was going to be as successful a sport as it is today.
I think that's what it is, Tim. I think it's the reward, you know. I never would have believed that I would have had the opportunity to get into the National Hall of Fame. And I've been lucky enough to be inducted into the San Jose Earthquakes Hall of Fame and the city of San Jose's Hall of Fame. This is just stuff that you just don't believe happens. I just played the game. I love to play it. I played it for the fans, especially, in San Jose and Pittsburgh. Anywhere I played, I went out on the field thinking these people are paying money to watch me play, and if I mess up, I've got to make up for it, and score a goal or do whatever I need to do to put us back on, in the right, send these people home happy, and just this, just to be, by your peers. Elected into that is just a great honor. But looking back at it now, from the beginning, I just feel that it really works. You just don't quit and you keep on working, and I knew that this game would get big in this country at one time, and I wanted to be a part of it. And I think that's what proves it when I look at and you remind me that I'm in the Soccer Hall of Fame, and people come up and talk to me about that, or ask me questions, or interview me about it, and that's when you really appreciate, all the people and players that you're involved with in the game, and how it's developed and where it's going, and hopefully, we're going to be one of these teams. Obviously not this next World Cup, but one of these teams in the World Cup and get into the semi-finals and quarterfinals and final.
All right, so I can't let you go then without sort of weighing in, given your rich history, your Hall of Fame career. What is how do you look at the state of the game in the United States, both on the pro level, the international level? I mean, there's a lot of it's an interesting crossroads we're in right now, right? Obviously, not making the tournament for next year, and there's a lot of dissension, I think, now amongst the professional ranks about Major League Soccer and will the NASL be able to survive as a Division II team, and what about promotion and relegation? I mean, there's a lot of people. I think it's a good thing, all right, that people are actually paying attention and seriously debating a lot of these issues that, longtime fans like us, have known about for quite some time, but has never been sort of in the, the larger public consciousness in this country. So I guess that's a good thing on that level. But I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about where you think the pro and the international game are going at this moment in time, which is not, it's a little uncertain now, given what we've experienced the last couple of weeks with the U.S. national team.
Well, I got to agree with you. I think it's woke. It's opened a lot of eyes and woke the game. The people in the game up, and I think it's now stirring up. And I mean, I have a lot of people that I know in this Pittsburgh area. That are soccer fans when they see me, but not really. And then they when anything like this happens, and the U.S. are not going to make the World Cup this time around. What do you think about it? And I think that it's time, that we do wake up, and we have to realize that I'm doing a lot of youth coaching and youth development stuff still, Tim, and I just see a potential here, unlimited. We have some great youth players, and I think we've got a lot of players around the world playing now where, at one time, when I was coming here at 19, we have players now going to everywhere else in the world to play with pro teams. So, I kind of came here to develop the game, introduce it, and create American players. So I think we're doing that, and I think we're getting there. I just think that we have to, step back now and realize that we've still got a lot more catching up to do. And we've got to realize that we've got a lot of potential in this country and a lot of good players, and we've just got to capitalize on that and find ways of getting them into a group. And we've got to remember that this is such a big country, and like I say, with players all over the world now that are playing in top-level teams that are American players. we got to, and get those guys in here and develop them and make them a part of this new U.S. national team. And obviously, the coach is a big part of it. They've got to obviously get somebody that can do that kind of thing and draw the quality of players that I know are out there and we've got growing up as well, and tap into that. And I think I really feel, hopefully I'll see it before, I'm gone, where we see a U.S. national team in the World Cup final.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, I mean, let's hope that's the case. And look, it's also, I think we also need, to your point, we step back. We recognize that, without players of a pioneering nature such as yourself, we wouldn't even be in this position to even consider, our next achievements and levels of this country. I mean, we've got soccer-specific stadiums. We have a thriving professional league. We've got a very successful and growing minor league soccer league system. You mentioned the youth game. I mean, these are all things that, you go back to when you were playing in your earliest days here in the States in 72 and 73. None of this was here. So, frankly, without players and dedication from folks like yourself, we probably wouldn't even be in this position today. So, that's a backhanded way of saying my thanks for regaling us with some of your achievements and your career and your legacy. And I look forward to hopefully staying in touch and maybe some more good things to talk about in this in the world of soccer as we move forward.
Oh, I'd love to, Tim. I appreciate it a lot, and I'm glad that you're out there and we're still preaching the word of soccer, and like you say, there's a lot of new players that are playing in the MISL and MLS, and players out there that they've still got to go out and they've still got to give back as well. It's not just. We got it going now. They've got to continue that on. So hopefully they will do that as the game grows.
All right, there it is. There's our chat with Paul Child, National Soccer Hall of Famer, and our fifth such Hall of Famer that we've had on this little podcast. And I've loved every single one of them. Lots of really deep and interesting stories about the earliest days of soccer in this country that, not everybody sort of appreciates and frankly doesn't remember and needs to. The sport of soccer is very rich and colorful these days. It was certainly less than that, 30, 40 years ago. And I think it's really important to remember some of the contributions that folks like Paul and others that we've had on this podcast thus far. I mean, Rick Davis, Dr. Joe Matchnick, Paul Gardner, Kyle Roach Jr., of course. You can go back into those episodes and regale in some of those stories. We also mentioned Terry Hansen, who was the general manager of the Atlanta Chiefs when Paul was there. That's episode number 14. You can go back on that one. And of course, who could forget Crazy George Henderson? That was our number 7 episode. You go back and listen to that, and you can get some more of your San Jose earthquake memories and other things there as well. Paul Child, we thank you for being part of our conversation. And in particular, we want to thank our friend in Pittsburgh, John Fredland, for getting us connected with Paul. And you too can be part of the show by being engaged with us on our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com. You'll find our email address and all that kind of stuff there. As John did, you will also find our Twitter feed, of course, at Good Seats Still. You will find an Instagram page called Good Seats Still Available, where we post a nice little image from our show every day, as well as a Facebook page if you want to give us a like there. Certainly can use some love on Facebook. We appreciate that too. Let's see, what else? We want to thank our friends at Podfly. Of course, it's Jerry Payne, Eric Begay, David Gregerson, Corey Coates, Podfly Productions. That's Podfly, PODFLY.net. They are the professionals down in Gadsden, Alabama, that make this podcast sound as delicious as possible, despite all of my efforts to make it less than that. So we thank all the boys down in Gadsden, Alabama, and Podfly Productions. And again, if you want some help getting going with your own podcasting stuff, podfly.net is the place to go. Tell them that Tim Hanlon and or Good Seats Still Available sent you. And hopefully they will remember and appreciate that recommendation. And I think you will appreciate their services as well. All right, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next week with another fun-filled episode. And until then, take care, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.